One class I found a quote, and I might misquote it just a little, but it's by Einstein, and it says, "The mind." Let's see. The intuition is the master, and mind the servant. But we live in a society where the servant has become the master. So we value our minds and our intellect more than we value our intuition. Whereas the mind is supposed to be a tool that works for your deeper knowing.
Hey, Happy New Year, everybody. How are you doing out there? I'm waiting for you to say something. So I'm Lauren, your host of Yogakane, and welcome to our first episode, A Yogi's Journey to Finding the Flow of Life. Yogakane is a podcast that's all about the yoga community in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. In this particular episode, we are traveling to the Northwest region to visit my town, Spokane, Washington, to talk to a yoga instructor who is extremely knowledgeable in pre- and postnatal yoga, Neely Gibbons Wadden. So Neely and I met when I was taking my yoga teacher training at Harmony Yoga. And Harmony Yoga is a great studio in Spokane. If you haven't been there yet, make sure you check it out. And Neely taught the prenatal portion of the training. And during our conversation, I quickly realized that Neely is continuously supporting her students to give birth to a new part of themselves. And I found a quote that Neely wrote that really summarizes her and what she's doing for this community. Our ideas, our music, our belief can be considered our offspring. I just really love this because this quote just reminds me that as humans, there's always something that's growing inside of us, which is really appropriate, especially since we are now entering into a new year. I mean, how many of you have already set your New Year's resolutions or have created a new vision or idea on what you want out of this world? I know I certainly have. I mean, this podcast is an example of that, but none of this is happening overnight. Going back to Neely's quote, I've decided instead of rushing the growth cycle, I've decided to love and nurture my goals for 2019, much like I would a child or pet. Give it the tools to grow, the grace and understanding when my goals go off course or take a totally different direction, laughter and love to pick myself up when all I want to do is just be lazy and watch Netflix, and praise and joy when I'm following through with stuff. So enough of all of that. I just really wanted to share that quote with you from Neely because, I really just thought it sets a beautiful tone for 2019 and a new way to think about or approach those wonderful, awesome things that we want to manifest this year. So here we go. I just gave birth to this podcast. I'm all about imagery, you'll find out. And I couldn't have asked for a better person to stand beside me to get this first episode out there. The woman in the Spokane community who supports rebirth, Neely. So please enjoy Yogakane's first episode with the beautiful and nurturing Neely Gibbons Wadden. All right, well, hello, Yogakane community. Lauren here, and I'm here with Neely at her lovely home, and we are here to talk about yoga. Hi, Neely.
Hi, Lauren.
And
Snowdrop and Pretty Face.
Snowdrop.
My two kittens nuzzled up beside us.
So sweet.
I know.
They're cuddled together and making almost a yin-yang kind of look, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So cute.
They're so sweet.
And one is dark and one is light too.
Yeah.
How cute. That's what we should have named them.
Oh, maybe next time.
Yeah.
You get your next cats. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much again for doing this with me. And so, yeah, I guess could you just kind of start off telling, me and the Yogakane, or soon to be Yogakane community about yourself and, your story of yoga, like how you became a yoga instructor, or, why you became a yoga instructor and kind of your journey there.
Sure.
That sounds good.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll try to keep it concise because it's one of those stories that can become pretty long. But I guess I should say I'll start at the very beginning because it won't take too much longer. But when I was in my early 20s, and my big sister lived in town, I was working as a server just out of college, and she and I went to a flow yoga class downtown somewhere, and it was my very first yoga class ever. I'd never tried yoga or anything. I'd done Pilates and things like that. And my background's in gymnastics, so I love stretching my body, and I knew how that felt and how much I loved that. And so we went to a flow class with no experience whatsoever. I stepped in, and it was an amazing flow, but the instructor was pretty just a little haughty about it, and really just kind of wouldn't help us, wouldn't give us any alignment cues. And at one point, my sister and I laughed and giggled because we didn't know what we were doing, and she actually told us not to laugh. And that turned us off of yoga. I thought, if I can't laugh doing this, I don't want to do it. So
right, you're like balancing on one leg.
Yeah.
How is this not funny?
Yeah, exactly. When it's your first time ever doing these things, and you're like the two worst people in class because everybody else there they knew what they were doing. And now as a teacher, I know it is funny when people with no experience walk into a flow class. But, we were just giving it a try, and I really wasn't inspired by that class at all because it just seemed kind of elitist, like this group of people didn't want me there, and they didn't want us laughing and ruining their Zen. And so walked out of that and didn't even think about going to another yoga class. So fast forward about maybe 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was, of course, I stayed active. I've always been pretty active in my life. And I was pregnant in 2007 with my first baby, and I had always heard that yoga was good for pregnancy. So I bought a yoga DVD, a prenatal yoga DVD, and did that every single day pretty much throughout my pregnancy. And I loved it. It felt great. Still, it didn't even occur to me to go to a yoga class. It felt wonderful. It really helped my birth a lot. The nurses were really impressed with my strength and ability to push and things like that. And I think a lot of it came from my yoga practice. So after my son Asa was born in 2007, my mother-in-law actually bought me a pass to yoga and said to just Google, or she offered to buy me a pass and said to Google a place nearby where I could go to yoga, and she'd come and be with my baby. And so that was exciting. I Googled where's the closest yoga studio, and it's Harmony Yoga, which I had never heard of. And it's probably, what would you say, 9 blocks from here?
Oh, yeah. It's like 3 minutes away.
Yeah.
It's so close.
Yeah, it's definitely close. I walk there a lot when it's nice out. So I Googled that and wound up in a Harmony Yoga class with a woman named Jackie Cattell.
Oh, right.
Who now owns Sunflower Yoga, I think. So she was my very first yoga teacher.
Wow.
I took I took a semester with her in beginner's yoga. And then I asked her if I should move up to the next level, and she actually flunked me. She said, no, you still need to listen to my languaging and learn how to follow my languaging without looking at what everybody else is doing. And I was humbled by that because I thought I caught on pretty well with my gymnastics background. But it was awesome too because she was right, and that was maybe one of the first cool things I learned about yoga is that you need to tune in and go within yourself and listen to the languaging of the instructor without even needing to look around you at all. Your instructor ideally wouldn't be doing any of the poses even, if you're listening to his or her languaging. So anyway, she flunked me the first time, so I took her second semester and enjoyed it. It was very basic when we were talking about basics earlier. It was very basic, and it got a little boring sometimes because she stuck to the very basic poses and did every little tiny detail of all of them.
Really?
She's a wonderful instructor.
Was it, so with the basics then, was her class more workshop, or was there an element of flowing from, not flowing like vinyasa, but was it, a sequence-based class where you go from one to the next, or was it more stop and go?
It was more stop and go, if I remember correctly. And back then, Harmony did sessions, or what do they call them? Like semesters. And so it was kind of the same group of people for, I don't even remember how many weeks, maybe 8 weeks or something.
That's cool.
Yeah. So she could build 1 week upon the next. That is one thing that we've kind of lost with just doing drop-ins, is because you never know who you're going to get every week. And so it's harder to build a class. So she was able to take us and then move us to more difficult poses as it went. But it was more stop and go. I don't even remember learning sun salutations. I think she took each pose as it was.
Wow.
And then after 2 semesters of that, I was kind of eager to try some more. So I think I took a level 1 class with Allie, and that blew me away, of course. And her teaching is amazing. So needless to say, I really got into yoga, and I was driving home from yoga one day, finding myself chanting in Sanskrit and my shoulders being completely light as a feather. Whereas, I usually carry most of my tension in my upper back and shoulders and neck. And I realized, gosh, I feel nothing here. It's not like I don't feel that tension that has been with me for so long. And just realizing that all of the advantages that I was receiving from only going to yoga once a week. I wasn't really establishing a home practice at all. Yeah, because I had my baby at home, and I just wasn't, I went on a lot of walks, but yeah, just from once a week. So that was exciting. Then when I got pregnant for the second time with my daughter Maisie, I moved over to the prenatal yoga class. And at that time, Harmony Yoga had a woman named Cara Wright, who now, I don't think she's teaching prenatal anymore, but she was wonderful, taught prenatal at Harmony for 10 years, I think. So I went to prenatal with Cara, loved it. It was awesome. It was very empowering. Planned a home birth this time because I wasn't super satisfied with, I didn't feel very empowered with my hospital birth on my first delivery. So I planned a home birth and was doing a lot of yoga, working on breath work and softening and all of these things to prepare for my birth. And had a beautiful home birth right here. Oh, wow. Right there, actually.
Did you have a fire going?
No, that's not a working fireplace, unfortunately. But we had candles all around. It was a rainy October night.
Oh, my gosh.
It was really lovely.
Yeah.
And I actually had her before the midwives came. Maisie's dad was in the bathroom, and I kind of had her by myself in the living room.
Wow.
So yoga, my prenatal yoga class and my midwife helped me to feel completely empowered. And it was so inspiring, so empowering. I am 100% open to however anybody wants to give birth. I'm not like, this is the only way to do it, but I loved my home birth. It was amazing. It was what I needed, and it was safe and gentle and empowering, and there was no fear. It was just amazing. So shortly after Maisie was born, Alison Rubin called me, the owner of Harmony. And Maisie was literally like a month old. And I wasn't even back to yoga yet. And Allie asked if I wanted to be the prenatal yoga teacher at Harmony. And I wasn't even a yoga teacher, obviously, at this point. She had seen me in her class. We liked each other. We talked a couple times. So yeah, she just felt inspired to offer that to me. So I didn't even really have to think about it. I was like, do I want to be a yoga teacher? Yes.
In your bones, you're just
Exactly. It was, wow. So she offered to send me to the training in Seattle, at the Seattle Holistic Center with a woman named Colette Crawford, who's kind of the world authority on prenatal and postnatal yoga. She is amazing. If you see articles on prenatal and postnatal yoga, chances are she's been interviewed for that article. I've seen her name in Yoga Journal and a few other places. So I was really lucky, and we're lucky to have her so close over in Seattle. So Allie sent me over there. At that time, Maisie was 5 months, so we brought the family along, and I was pumping milk so that, their dad could watch them during the daytime while I went to the training all day. So it was kind of a crazy time. They basically lived in the hotel while I popped over to the training.
How long was your training?
It was just 4 days.
Okay.
But then
intensive.
I've gone back a couple more times to Seattle and taken more prenatal yoga. So the first segment of her training was 4 days, but it was like 4 12-hour days.
Right.
Yeah, so it was pretty intense.
Oh yeah, they
and
don't
driving
just give
in the
it
city.
away.
No. Yeah.
You gotta put your hours in.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really inspiring, and it was fun to meet a lot of like-minded people with the same enthusiasm for birth and for yoga's place in preparing for birth.
Like, did you even know that that world existed? Really? Or until you started meeting?
No, probably not until I started going to prenatal yoga with Cara, because Cara trained with the same woman. Cara also trained with Colette Crawford. And Cara always had these beautiful words to say and wisdom. She was also a doula, and so it kind of seeped out of her, and I was like, oh, cool. There are these people whose world it is to encourage women and empower them in their birth. So, yeah, so I kind of had a hint of it through Cara, but going over there, Colette Crawford is an amazing presence. She's just a wonderful woman. Makes everybody feel, peaceful and at home. Yeah. So I can't say enough about her. She was just wonderful, and learning from her was inspiring. So, yeah, I immediately came back from that training, and 3 days later took up the prenatal yoga classes at Harmony.
Wow.
So it turned out to be great for me, because I've learned since then that that's how I have to do things. If I learn a new skill, I bring it into my classes immediately, because you can't just overthink it. You can't just get all nervous about it and like second guess the way you're going to teach it. You just have to come and try to teach it right after you've learned it. I think for me, that's what works.
Right.
So it was great for me to learn this, prenatal yoga. And I already had a lot under my belt for doing prenatal yoga. And then boom, I was teaching like 3 days after I graduated from her program. So I've been teaching that prenatal yoga twice a week at Harmony ever since then. And that will be 8 years ago in April.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea it's been that long. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
That's crazy. That whole process is just neat. How Alison though, she seems to be super in touch with her and being intuitive. And for her to like see that in you and just kind of move with that and trust in that process, or at least be open to that possibility of you saying yes and exploring that, and having her see that in you is pretty empowering as well, I would imagine.
It is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I think that if you can listen to that intuition and just let answers come to you, that's how life works in like kind of that Taoist way, like finding the natural flow of things. Most of my jobs that I've had in life have been someone offering it to me without me going after it.
Wow.
Yeah. Someone being like, I feel that you would like this, or you would enjoy this. I'm like, oh, I would.
How do you get in touch with that within yourself, that mentality, or has that always just kind of been a part of you? Like
intuition and flowing? I've always been a little bit that way, my mom said. I think I've become more that way through the process of getting into yoga. And I think there have been times in my life where I've lost touch with it a little more. Say maybe like in college. I kind of lost touch of my intuition a little bit more and got further away with that. But I think that the way that, for me, the way that I stay in touch with letting things happen, or, you would say the flow of life, or the way, as a Taoist would say, is by feeding it, like by following it. So if you follow your intuition and you do what it says, it grows stronger. If you ignore it, it grows weaker.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it's the thing that you feed that grows in your life. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Like habits, like bad habits or good habits. I've been trying to move away from good or bad. So just habits in general.
The judgments.
Living out of that duality and trying to get away from that. So just habits, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like my thing is sometimes I'll get up in the morning and I'll immediately go, if it's after 6, I'll go onto Snapchat and I'll just look at this new story that's totally just rag gossip. And I'll just go through it for like 5 minutes. But, so that has been a little habit of mine. So now when I wake up, I've been wanting to cultivate a new habit where I don't do that immediately. Because when I was going through the yoga teacher training, Alison, her thing that she encouraged us to do was to get up and do your best to get into a meditation. 3 minutes, 1 minute, whatever it is. So I've been going back into that because I'll do it after the Snapchat. But so I'm just trying to reverse a few things. So just like the habit,
Yes.
And yeah, it is really interesting about just being in touch with the intuition, and we really do live in a time where it's kind of appropriate to suppress that, or not to be in touch with that. And
exactly,
it's really. Do you talk about that in your trainings at all? Is that something that is like a theme of yours, a general theme, or?
Yeah, I do. I have intuition as a theme in my classes, and I talk about intuition definitely in my partner yoga and massage for labor workshop and my mama yoga workshops, because it's so important to be able to tune into that. And in for one class, I found a quote, and I might misquote it just a little, but it's by Einstein, and it says, the mind, the intuition is the master and mind the servant, but we live in a society where the servant has become the master. So we value our minds and our intellect more than we value our intuition, whereas the mind is supposed to be a tool that works for your deeper knowing, for your intuition. So yeah, I do bring that into my classes and try to teach people to cultivate that intuition and make it stronger. And and the more I cultivate it in my life, the more things seem to be working. It's amazing. I have little practices that I do where I just let things flow the way that they're supposed to, and they do. Like one thing is I have one of those like vitamin things that has the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I put the vitamins that I take every day, right? It's so strange, but if I just let it flow the way it's supposed to and set an intention, I can dump 7 out each time.
Wow.
Like 7, 7, 7 for each day of the week. And it just happens that way. Like I set the intention that 7 are going to come out, and I know just how to kind of tip it so that 7 come out. It sounds so silly, but
I should have done that for the raffle last night. I should have been reading all my numbers. Like 328117 will be called next.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yes.
No,
I don't know if it would work that way.
Yeah.
But I do think that the power of intention and, setting forth setting forth your intention and what you think is the natural way for things to go, but also being open to the way things are going.
Right.
And non-resistance to the way it is.
Yeah, trying to take away that expectation of how we expect things to go. Mm-hmm. Is there any thing that you reference for that? Like anything that's specifically like a book or a teacher or any kind of method that you've been referencing, or is it just kind of intuitively kind of just come to you?
It kind of comes to me, and I find different ways to present it. But there is one original book where I read a story that got me thinking about it, which is Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Great book for any man or woman to read. And she's a Jungian analyst, and she takes different old myths, and one of them is called Vasilisa the Wise, and it's a myth. It's kind of similar to I'm trying to think. It's almost, I can't think of it, but it's almost similar to another old myth that everybody knows. That's kind of a children's fairy tale, but it's about a little girl, and her mother dies, and her mother gives her this doll, and the doll represents intuition. And she has to feed the doll, and then the doll will tell her what to do. And the doll gets her through some pretty bad scrapes. So I read that. I've read it to my kids in the past from Women Who Run with the Wolves, and they love it. And because I always want to talk to my kids about intuition.
Wow,
especially my daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, especially, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, because we do, I know, it kind of reminds me as well of when you teach, pulling people out of the mind, connecting to the body, and letting the spirit kind of just weave them together so that the mind doesn't override the body.
Yes.
So the mind doesn't override that intuition. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That is, I have to look up that book.
Yeah, if you haven't read it, I would definitely recommend.
Yeah.
I have it if you want to borrow it. Yeah.
That's like the second book that I need to borrow from you.
Yeah, I know. I'm always giving books to people.
Bookshelf has so much on it, doesn't it?
It's got some really, really good stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Well, so, okay, where should we go next now from here? Because you were talking,
Yeah.
Because you were at, so you kind of went from, so I did my prenatal training, and then you have been teaching for 8 years. So, like, what's kept you teaching yoga for 8 years? Because I know that there's probably so much question right there in the middle of your story, because you've grown obviously as a teacher, and you don't just teach primarily prenatal. You go into intermediate and vinyasa and one-on-one practices and gentle yoga. So and now you're doing like between stuff with little teenagers. And so like, okay, so there's a lot that's happened these past 8 years.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, it's all just evolved. And again, it's kind of in just kind of letting it evolve the way that it does. One of the big things that prompted me teaching more, though, I have to say, is my divorce, because I needed to make money. At that point, I could have just quit teaching yoga and gone back to get some kind of business job. I used to work at closing real estate deals. I could have done something like that, and I would have money and I would have insurance, but I would be working, 40 hours a week and seeing my kids a lot less. So that was when I really committed myself to teaching more. And it was also a really hard time for me. So it was also a time where I had to learn how to set aside what was going on in my personal life and come to the mat and teach.
Wow.
And I think that's really important for instructors to do. Not that we can't take our personal stories and relate them in class, but if you're having a particularly difficult time, you can't keep bringing that to class over and over. You have to, you have to come with something to teach, and you have to bring your best self there.
How did you do that?
I would have to breathe on my way there, center, usually set an intention for class. Also, I feel like my teaching saved me throughout that. My students, without knowing it, helped me through that. I didn't mention that I was in the process of a divorce to any of my students during that. I'm kind of a private person, especially when I was going through that. I didn't talk to anybody about it except for friends and family. So I let them help me by letting like my teaching be a place where that wasn't involved, kind of.
Right.
Where the turmoil of my personal life could be set aside, and I could just be Neely, the yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And
not be identified as that process.
Exactly.
Like you could just
and that's one thing that helped me through that process, is being like, I'm not this. No. This is a life situation that's going on right now, but it's not who I am.
Right.
Exactly. Oh. So there were some tough times, I think. I think one thing about yoga teachers is, I don't want to go too far off onto this so we can cover more, but we have to act happy all the time. I mean, that's an overstatement. We don't, but we really try to show up with our best selves when we come to teach. We can't bring our emotional baggage to class with us. But that can be great for us too, because it can be a chance for us to set aside what's going on and to learn how to bring our best selves to a situation, no matter what's going on in our personal lives. So yeah, there were days where I would teach and get done and just go back into some kind of depression or, worrying about something that was going on. But sometimes teaching was the best thing that I did during that period of time.
Right. Just gave you that reprieve.
Yes, exactly.
And kind of another focus point. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Exactly.
I definitely can see that, because at the same time, as a teacher, it's not really, we talk a lot about how, like we were talking about, like the students find the teacher finds the students, but at the same time, it's not really so much who's teaching. You're just there to hold a container for students to connect their mind, body, and spirit and go on their inward journey.
Exactly. And we're like a conduit of the practice.
Right. Yeah. And so kind of, it sounds really like you probably learned so much about yourself as a teacher through that process, and how to kind of just get into that mind state of just holding this safe space. And ultimately that just kind of moved into you. I'm sure it like really helped you, even though you're going through this tough stuff. Like coming home after that probably helped a little bit too.
It did.
'Cause it kind of can let you see the bigger picture a little bit more. You know?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's amazing. I mean, we're so lucky as yoga teachers because we get to meditate while we work, you know?
Yeah, you really
and we
do.
get to feel that energy moving through our students and back to ourselves, and that loop, you know, and it's really an honor.
Yeah. When you were teaching during that time, did you find that you would repeat a mantra or the intuition or your intention during class, so that you could kind of like just continue to have that be just like you're a safe space, or so you weren't giving off like what was going on in your life in that environment? Because it is easy, or there can be a tendency to project sometimes when you're going through tough situations, you know, or we can sometimes
absolutely
like infect. So did you find yourself like
learning how to set a barrier? I think so. I think so. I mean, again, it was like breathing on the drive there, you know?
Yeah.
Breathing, grounding, and not letting other thoughts come in. So it probably helped my meditation practice, because teaching was a meditation. I was focusing on the moves, on the breath, watching my students, you know, what am I gonna, you know, what pose is next, and just trying to stay intently there and not letting my mind go off in other directions.
Wow.
I wasn't always successful,
No.
you know, sometimes my mind would go in other directions, and I'd have to say to myself, I see you, thought, I will be back to you at some point, but I need to draw myself back into the present. So it probably was one of my best tools, you know, for learning meditation and strengthening that.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
You know, it's kind of reminds me of what you were talking about right after you went through your training with Colette Crawford, how 3 days later you then were teaching. And so I'm sure those first few classes that you had, or for the first few months, they weren't always your best teaching.
No.
But it's like, but what yoga teachings kind of reminded me of is that, you know, it might not be the best day that you show up, but you always have that next class. Like there's always another opportunity. Like you can't define your whole entire yoga experience as a teacher or a student or whatever just by one class.
Yeah.
Because there's always like going to be another class.
Yeah.
No matter what, like either next on the schedule and you're not the teacher, but you know, like there's always another yoga class that you have to just go to as a student or be there as a teacher, prepared for it, and just learn from what happened. Or maybe you don't even learn from it. Maybe you're just like, okay, that was
that's over.
That's just over. Like,
yeah, there are some classes where I feel like, oh, I nailed that. That was so great. I really, you know, got my point forward and everything. And then there are other classes where I was like, well, that class is over.
wow.
Yeah.
At least it was a safe sequence, but I don't really know, like, what that Dharma talk was.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what then came after this time following, or what came out of that time after your...
So during my divorce, or separation and then divorce, I wound up starting to teach a little bit more prenatal and postnatal yoga. I started a weekly postnatal class, a place that's now trying to reopen in Spokane, a mother-centered place that was started by my friend Heather Villa, opened. It was called Belakova, and that was over on Washington, where, I can't think of the name of the restaurant. There's a restaurant there now. Anyway, so I wound up teaching a lot during that time, because she opened this new place and said, what do you want to teach? Teach whatever you want. And so we had this cute little yoga room, and it was a mother-centered place. So there was all these, things you could buy and classes and breastfeeding support and some other support groups for moms and dads. And so I taught there a lot and got a lot of experience, but Belakova didn't wind up, they just couldn't afford the rent for very long. So I think they were open for maybe a year. That closed down, but I got a lot more teaching experience from there because I went from teaching 2 classes a week to teaching about 9 classes a week at Belakova, and I taught some workshops and things like that.
Kind of got you into like a little rhythm.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, then I was really just kind of rocking with that. And so when that closed down, briefly, Harmony opened a North Side studio that was in Kendall Yards, so it wasn't really super north. So I wound up teaching a lot more at that, and then that closed down. And I'm trying to think of the timeline after that. Then I started teaching some classes at the Women's Club, just down the street, just on my own. So I got a business license. And,
okay.
And yeah, and I still have that business license. It's called Neely's Yoga. And was just kind of teaching patches here and there. And I think it was only 3 years ago that I got my 200 hour through Harmony Yoga.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 3. It might be 4. That I actually finally got my 200 hour, which was funny because I had been teaching regular classes and flow and, subbing a lot at Harmony with just my prenatal yoga teacher training.
Right.
So finally got the 200 hour underway, and that was a wonderful experience.
Did you learn?
Harmony.
Did you take a lot away from that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It made me more confident.
Okay.
A lot of confidence is what I took away. Like I felt like, the alignment and all that stuff, I kind of knew from going to so many classes.
Right.
And from just teaching. Like you can learn so much from teaching. And but yes, I did. I took a lot away, and I loved the philosophy that she teaches there, and I love the Ayurveda. That's what turned me on to Ayurveda, which has become a huge part of my daily life now, and also I bring it into my classes. So I learned a lot from that for sure. And the sequencing,
Right.
I learned a lot of sequencing and how to be more confident. So yeah, after that, then I was so excited. I didn't realize how much it would open me up to have a 200 hour, but I wound up finding a job working for Royal Life Centers, teaching people who are in rehab for drugs and alcohol. So now, pretty much to the day, I've been there for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So 3 times a week I teach at Royal Life Centers, and twice a week is with people that are fresh out of detox, which is pretty challenging. And then once is people who are in a 9-week program where they're done with detox, they're done with the program, and then they're going to extend their treatment. And so they come once a week to this yoga class, and they have other classes at Royal as well. So that has been extremely interesting as a teacher because the students don't really want to be there, most of them. And B, most of them have never ever done yoga, and they see yoga from kind of a standpoint of like what you see on magazines and what you hear. So they don't see it as a mind-body experience. They don't realize that meditation is yoga.
Right.
And they're just super fresh, which can be really, really rewarding and also super challenging because every single time, and I teach there 3 times a week, every single time pretty much I have to kind of explain yoga and move it. I never plan the class ahead of time because you can't plan ahead of time for something like that. You never know what it's going to be like. You might get 3 people who are actually kind of into yoga.
Okay.
And then 3 people who don't want to be there, don't want to get on their mat, don't want to move their body. And so you have to decide what you're going to teach kind of on the fly.
Wow.
So I teach a lot of meditation there. I do like an intro to yoga speech at the beginning most days. So people will realize I talk about the 8 limbs of yoga and how asana or hatha is only 1/8 of what yoga is, and how meditation, pranayama, and all the other aspects, the yamas and niyamas, I sometimes talk about. And yeah, I've had people really resonate with it and be so grateful for it, and hopefully they're carrying it out. I mean, I don't stay in touch with these people, but hopefully they're carrying it out into their life and recovery. I see people come back 3 or 4 times into the same center. And then I also have people who seem kind of angry at me for making them do yoga.
Really? Yeah.
So I've seen some interesting things there.
You do the intro, and then what do you do next?
I just never know, Lauren. Like it's always new. I mean, usually what I do is, you know how there are 3 ways we should move our spine every day. The side to side, twisting back and forth, and the cat-cow. So I usually try to start with that.
Okay.
Super gentle. If they don't want to get down on a mat, I know how to do all these things with them in a chair. So, you know, just sitting, I let them sit in a chair if they refuse to get on a mat, reaching their hands up, palms facing, side to side, gentle twist side to side, hands to knees, cat-cow, and I teach breath. Like I'm really into the breath. Inhale, exhale as I teach all of these. Wow. And a lot of times, even the people that are resistant after doing those 3 things with their spine, they're a little bit like, oh, I feel better. And that's the reward for all of that, is when people are like, oh, I feel good. Like you're not hurting me. You're not making me do something crazy. So if that goes well, then we'll move into maybe some standing poses. Okay. Or maybe we'll get on our backs and draw the knees to the chest and maybe extend one leg up and take a tiny little hamstring stretch. But I'm constantly reading the crowd. And if people seem upset or uncomfortable, I'm scaling back. If people seem like they like it, I'm going to take it a little further. Right. So it is just always just reading the crowd the whole time. So it's pretty intense.
That is.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So with your students there, then, is it something that so you say that they don't choose to be there? It's something that they sign up for, or?
In the at the 2 times a week that I teach, when they're fresh out of detox, yes, they don't choose to be there, but it's a fine line. Like we can't force them to do yoga, but it is a group and they've signed up for it by being there.
Right.
And so they're strongly encouraged to do it. But we, you know, obviously we can't force them to do it.
Right. I was just wondering, I was wondering, you know, how often do you see the same person or a few people? Is it a few times a week you can see the same people, or?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because the recovery process is all different. Oh, okay. So it's like their counselors decide how long they're there.
Got it.
So some people I'll teach for months and months. Wow. Because they'll go to the 9-week center and up in Mead, and then I'll teach them even longer. Wow. So I'll be with them for like 5 or 6 months, and I'll be teaching them every week. Wow. And then some people, I'll just see a few times, and then I don't know where they went, and I don't know, you know, I'm not involved in all that other stuff. So. And then sometimes I'll sadly see a couple of them back again and again, you know. Right. And so you just have to be like, well, it's nice to see you again. Yeah. Let's pick up from where we began, you know. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea that you did that.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I forgot to tell you about that.
That's really cool. No, I know the Royal Life. You mentioned that, but I didn't know that it was so focused on recovery development and supporting them through that process. And that's really powerful, Neely. Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you ever get any feedback from those students afterwards? Like, have you ever gotten any kind of, like, thank you, this really helped, or have you ever gotten anything like that?
Yes. It's so nice to get that. I have had a lot of them that will come up afterwards, and especially a lot of them, if they've really been with me for a long time, they'll tell me when it's their last session. Oh, wow. They'll be like, I'm done, this is my last session. A couple of them have come to my classes after that. Wow. But they'll give me a hug and they'll tell me I've had a lot of them say yoga was my favorite group, and they have many groups in rehab, you know, all kinds of groups with how to cope with life sober. So a lot of them will say that it's their favorite group and it really helped them in this way and that way. And it's awesome. That's what makes it all worthwhile, when you get that feedback and you feel like you're really making a difference, because it honestly almost feels like equal parts making a difference, and you feel like you're not. But then again, you never know, because some people won't tell you that it actually made a difference. But anything you tell someone, if you teach someone to take 10 deep breaths and count them, that's invaluable. Like, that is amazing. And so hopefully I'm making a difference with every one of them. But you never know.
Wow. Yeah. That's huge. Oh.
So around that same time, that was when I really started teaching yoga full time.
Okay.
And through my divorce, I was supplementing my income with serving. I working at fine dining and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So around that time, I was able to quit doing that and go full-time yoga. And that was kind of like stepping off of a cliff, like not knowing if I was going to land somewhere, you know. But it was amazing because, again, just following the way, like being like, if I open myself up to possibilities will come. So, you know, I think Royal came shortly after that. I have to say, I think I started working at Royal shortly after I quit working in the service industry.
Were there any kind of qualifications that you needed to have to work in that Royal environment?
Well, I just had to have, you know, my yoga certification. But then I take a weekly UA, so I can't do drugs or alcohol.
Oh, okay.
I can drink, although I'm not a big drinker. You can drink if you're not technically in recovery, but no pot or anything, which I don't do anyway. So that was no big deal for me. So there was that, and then I had to get my CPR and first aid, bloodborne pathogens. I had to learn violence de-escalation and how to deal with people, which happens there. You know, how to deal with people that are angry. And things like that. So yeah, there was a lot of paperwork, but there was no other certification other than having the yoga certification.
Right. That nonviolence de-escalation, that must have actually helped in general, just with life.
Yeah,
because that's
great
good stuff to know.
It's great. Yeah, I think everybody should read how to, you know, how to communicate with someone who's being angry or violent. Yeah.
Yeah, at the yoga feast, the festival in Sagal, there was someone there that talked about nonviolent communication.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked into that?
I've heard about it. I know there's a book called Nonviolent Communication, and I have a friend who taught it for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I bet they're vaguely similar. I don't know, but just kind of how to, you know, that's Neely. That is really neat. The Royal stuff that you do.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, okay. So from there then is when you began to really be embracing this yoga journey and being an instructor and just letting it kind of guide your next steps then. So in that confidence then, so then from there, how did you now begin to, with your prenatal then, you're teaching at Harmony and any other places, or just really?
I also taught for a little over a year at Yoga Joy North.
Okay.
But it's so far north. It was kind of hard for me to be driving up there all the time from the South Hill. So I did get a lot of good experience there though, because I was teaching 4 classes a week there.
Oh wow. So
yeah, I quit Yoga Joy North at the end of July of this year.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, so it was still pretty fresh. But what I really started growing during that time as well is my workshops. In my prenatal and postnatal yoga teacher training with Colette Crawford, she taught me how to teach partner yoga and massage for labor workshop. So I began teaching that at Harmony probably a year after I started teaching prenatal yoga.
Okay.
It could have been longer. And that's a workshop where, of course, their birth partners get to come in with them. It's a 2-hour workshop, and you teach ways to kind of enjoy labor and to work with the pain. It's specifically tailored toward women who want a drug-free birth, but a lot of the techniques are good for any birth, even preparing for a C-section. So it entails yoga positions, pranayama, which is breath work, massage that the partner can perform on the woman while she's in labor. Very light massage that helps, relieve some of the aches and pains that go on. And also communication, talking about communication that can be linked with yoga too, just being with her in the process instead of telling her what to do, breathing with her,
right,
and being there as a presence. So that workshop took a little while to kind of take off because I think people didn't know exactly what it was. But now I teach it every other month, and it's full every time.
Wow.
It's wonderful, and I've got great feedback from it. On my website, if you read the testimonials, many of them are from women who have emailed me after their births being like, wow, my partner was so able to be there, present with me, helping me through labor, helping me with back pain through massage, breathing together.
Yeah.
So I love teaching that workshop. It's kind of romantic. It's always in the evening, and the partners come and get to kind of nurture each other.
Oh,
and
totally.
I just absolutely love it. It's always just a great vibe, and I feel like teaching that workshop, I'm able to help people's birth outcome, which is super empowering.
Yeah, and it seems like it's not just focused on the woman, it's also focused on their partner too, to support them, because, a lot when you are pregnant, it seems, the focus is on, the woman who's carrying the child, but sometimes their partner can sometimes get a little overlooked.
Yeah.
So, kind of giving them tools and also supporting their process through this can really help with a happy outcome, at least for both, parents, so that they can feel like both of their needs are fulfilled, or that they can be there for each other. And I'm kind of thinking that my husband and I should do this.
Yeah.
Because it just sounds really nice. We went through a workshop before we got married, and what I really liked about the workshop was how it opened up our communication. And what I learned was what he needs to feel loved.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful to know, because what I think he might need isn't what he needs. And I bet that's what your workshop does for a lot of people. Like, you might think that she needs, ice cube chips, but what she really needs is for you to whatever.
Is touch or breathing.
Yeah. Or
yeah, interesting. Yeah. And she doesn't know what she's really going to need during labor, especially if it's her first labor, So it gives kind of a variety of tools for labor and delivery that they can use. And I'm always careful to say as well, she might not want you to touch her. She might not, respond to any of these, but your presence is important.
Yeah.
So it helps include the partner in the birth process and give them hands-on tools, or if not hands, if she's not feeling like being touched, like I said, communication tools and a way to be present with their partner during labor.
Well, we'll put these links for the partner yoga and the massage. We'll put those in the show links so that you can see when those are coming up for Neely. And if you and your partner are gonna have a baby, you should definitely go.
Yeah, thanks.
Because it should not be missed. Whenever I teach and I have a student who is pregnant, they'll usually, for the most time, at least, I'm assuming most of the students, they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm pregnant, before class. And so, when they say that to me, the first thing I say is, well, have you been to a prenatal yoga with Neely yet?
Thank you.
And they usually generally no. Because I think that once I've had a student come a few times, and then I don't really know where she's gone, but each time I just always reference prenatal class with Neely, or, just find a prenatal yoga class if you really are into yoga. So is that kind of what you would suggest for, if you're a student
and it's
of
not
yoga?
just because I teach prenatal either. I do think, and when I was pregnant and I did have a regular yoga practice and I was going to weekly classes, I knew my body well enough that I was okay with continuing my regular practice until I was about 11 weeks pregnant.
Okay.
And then I felt like it's time for me to switch. And so it's going to be different for every woman. If a woman has a well-established yoga practice, and I've seen some women do this, she might continue going to her regular flow class if her teacher is knowledgeable about what she can and can't do. However, even for that woman, I would recommend coming to prenatal yoga, because it's specifically tailored to pregnancy. So we go around at the beginning of each prenatal yoga class. You can talk about your aches, your pains, what's going on in your pregnancy, pregnancy news. Sometimes we are talking about different things that aren't about yoga, acid reflux and heartburn, and different mamas share what works for them.
Right.
Sometimes there's a woman who says, oh, I have my glucose test coming up, and the other women are like, oh, I did this. I just went through that. So it's a community. And that's why I highly recommend prenatal yoga to anyone who's pregnant and loves yoga, or even if they don't. It's one of the greatest things to do for your pregnancy in my experience.
Yeah, because even if you haven't done yoga before, prenatal yoga is still on the table.
Absolutely.
Like, it's still accessible. It's not just for someone that's been doing yoga for 10 years.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact,
anyone.
I would say probably 80% of the women in my prenatal yoga classes are beginners.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
I
awesome.
usually have a beginner in every single class because, they filter through. They have their babies and new women come in.
We have two beginners because they had the baby in the belly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so it's very gentle and adequate for beginners, but we do have some good strengthening in there, and it's a great practice. We have a certain sun salutation that we do that's a prenatal yoga sun salutation that I kind of came up with years ago, and it's people seem to really love it. But another thing that happens there is community. So a lot of the women who were at my Mama Yoga workshop yesterday with their babies, they met when they were in prenatal yoga. And because their babies are going to be similar ages, they exchange phone numbers and they go to coffee and then they go to the park together once their babies are born. And now they're raising their kids together and they met in prenatal yoga. So it's a wonderful community vibe. Yeah. And a lot of these women are coming back for successive pregnancies, coming back to yoga again and telling me that prenatal yoga was their favorite thing to do when they were pregnant and they couldn't wait to get back into it. So
let's get pregnant again. I need to get back to prenatal yoga.
I know, exactly. Well, and this was for me too. When I went to prenatal yoga, it was the only time I got away from my toddler during the entire week. And a lot of these women, same thing. They're on their second, third, fourth pregnancy, and they're like, prenatal yoga is the only time I get to leave the house and be alone for a little while.
Right.
So it's a sacred space. In the past, I've had spouses want to come and join. And I don't allow males in the prenatal yoga class because it is a sacred female space where we talk sometimes about, our bodies and the way our bodies are changing. And I want everybody to feel comfortable to say what's going on during those classes. So yeah, it's a lovely community.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Really, I'm so blessed to be able to teach it and to be involved with it.
And it really actually is all about what yoga is, which is like to yoke, to create like a union and like bring people together, so or yourself together too, because there's such good self-care in that moms are showing themselves when they're in that room, just so they can give themselves that time. Even with your royal your students at the royal place as well, like that is a way of self-care. Their whole recovery is a process of self-care, but that is, it's just all about giving people that time to get in touch with themselves and like, hi, what's going on with you today?
Exactly.
Within the body. When you said strengthening within the prenatal class, so what are some postures or poses that are encouraged for people who are pregnant to practice?
Well, some of them are strengthening and some of them are, lengthening and caring for the low back. Okay. There's usually a lot of back pain during pregnancy, and especially low back, because that's kind of where the belly is growing so much. So cat-cow every single practice. Although I still take cat-cow every single day, not being pregnant.
I heard if you do cat-cow for like every day, your body will remain youthful. Oh, I don't know what it is. So. I'll have to find out. I could be like spitting something, but
it's worth a try.
Yeah, I read it somewhere that what you're doing with the body, and I think it's also those 3 movements, of the spine, that just helps to keep the body feeling youthful on the inside. Keep the bones and joints lubricated and feeling really nice and prepared. So I think that, and that's one of the key poses is the cat-cow.
Yeah.
Okay. So cat-cow for sure.
Yeah, we always do things on all fours. It's
Okay.
wonderful for getting the baby's head in the right position for birth. It's wonderful for low back pain, for total spine, neck, shoulders. So cat-cow is one of the things we do on all fours, but we usually take quite a few other things on all fours. We do a lot of squatting. Squatting both strengthens your legs, your sacrum, and it also lengthens the muscles in the pelvic floor, which is important. We think about Kegels or strengthening the pelvic floor to prevent prolapse and incontinence, but the muscles of the pelvic floor also need to be long and lengthened, just like any other muscle. You wouldn't curl your bicep and make it strong without straightening your arm and lengthening that bicep out. So thinking of the pelvic floor as any other muscle, it needs to be long and strong. And also you need to learn how to soften it. So we do a lot of softening, learning how to consciously soften through the pelvic floor, through the face, the jaw. That's important for birth. So a lot of our postures are birth prep. Okay. And then a great deal of all the rest of them are prevention and alleviation of some of the common pregnancy aches and pains, and a lot of those cross over. They're both things.
Yeah.
Right. So, other strengthening. We avoid any strengthening through the core, of course.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is what are some postures to avoid?
Yes. So definitely nothing like
important.
It is. It's an important lesson. I get asked that a lot. So no twisting through the belly, no jumpings if you're accustomed to jumping out for poses or, jumping back to chaturanga, anything like that. I don't do plank, although I do know people who did plank during their pregnancy because I get so many beginners and it's hard to have a pregnant woman really understand plank when she's growing so much in the belly. So I don't plank with pregnant women in my classes.
Right, because you don't always know how people's practice. So if you were in a room full of intermediate yogis who are all pregnant, plank would be.
I would maybe do plank with knees down, and they would know how to take care of their low back and not let it sag, and their shoulders and everything.
That makes sense.
But since there's a lot of beginners, I don't do that because you don't also want to be super nitpicky in prenatal yoga because they're already just, probably not feeling great, kind of nervous. A lot of them are coming to their very first yoga class ever.
Wow.
So they're kind of nervous. So I always take poses that are pretty easy to verbally describe.
Okay.
I don't assist manually in prenatal yoga. Very, very, very rarely.
Oh, okay.
I would maybe if I saw something going on that was definitely going to injure someone, I might come in with my hands. But using verbal adjustments is really important to be hands off because you don't know if these women want to be touched. They're in such a, special time with their body and their relationship with their body. So, what else? No crunching, of course. You're allowing the belly muscles to release and soften. So
in cobra,
no crunches,
or
no cobra,
mini cobras.
Yeah, because that's another thing is we wouldn't lay on the belly. In the class, there are some women who possibly could still lay on their belly if they're in their first trimester, but then you've also got women that are 39 weeks along and there's not even a possibility to lay on the belly.
Oh, no.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, no prone position on the belly.
Yeah.
And tuning in deeply with how they feel, which is important for any yoga student, right? To listen to their edge, listen to how they feel, not take it any more deeply than what feels right. So my languaging is a lot about tune into what it is that your body needs right now from your practice. You might be in down dog, or you might bring your knees down, reaching the hips up and back for puppy pose. Or maybe today, bring the knees wide and sink down into child's pose. Find what works for you. And so there'll be all the women in one of 3 different poses in that case.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I love it. And I've actually brought that aspect into my flow, into my intermediate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if I'm working through a sun salutation, any class you get, you're going to get people of varying ability levels.
Yeah.
And so often if I'm in a sun salutation, I say 3 breaths in down dog, child's pose, or take an extra vinyasa. Moving forward to plank, chaturanga, up dog, down dog. So you'll see all of them doing different things because they're all going to have different needs from their practice. So I think it's important for yoga teachers for us to teach that intuition, teach them to look within and see what they need from their practice.
Right.
So I do that in all my classes, even flow. I'm not going to make them do another vinyasa. It's always like an invitation. Other options are to stay in dog or child's pose.
Yeah, and it's kind of giving this, it gives the students permission to be their own teacher.
Yes.
In the practice. So that you know, as a teacher, you know, again, you're holding the space, you're there to provide a support for their inward journey, but at the end of the, you know, within that practice, the student is actually their own teacher. And it's giving them those tools on, this is also available to you, you know, play with it, see, you know, experiment with that. You know, whenever a teacher gives me modifications like that, I try to take it because I wouldn't typically take a transition from a up dog or a cobra to, I wouldn't take a transition with tabletop up to down dog. But lately I've been taking this like one breath transition, and it's kind of been neat because as a teacher, I'm becoming more aware of the different people I might be teaching and their abilities. Yes. So like, kind of like what you were saying, I've been suggesting or providing that step, a pit stop between, you know, cobra or mini cobra and down dog is that tabletop. And it actually feels really good because you're kind of like,
you can set up,
and then you can set up and just get up into it again, because that down dog is such an interesting posture. I had someone the other day who was like, what is the point of down dog?
That's awesome.
I know.
That's really interesting. Were they a beginner?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
Right. So they were like, what are the most important variables here? Like, what should I be focusing on? And so we just talked about it for like 15 minutes after class. And awesome. I thought that was a really good question, because you get into a class, you get all these cues, and you're like, what are you talking about?
I know. And I think that's one thing that's really important for students to know, that it's okay to ask those questions.
Right.
There's no stupid question in yoga. Like, I love when students ask things like that, because I'm like, wow, great. Now you get to understand this more deeply. I want to tell them things like that, but I, don't want to say it if they already know.
I know. And also, do you think in a classroom, do you think it's cool for students to, if you're in the middle of something, for someone to say like, can you like help me, or what do you mean? Like, stop the class and just kind of talk, because when you're a student, it kind of feels like your throat chakra. We're talking about opening it, but sometimes it does feel like you can't always speak your truth sometimes if you're confused about something that you're in. And I'm pretty shy, actually, inwardly, so I would be one of those students who wouldn't ask the question. Yeah. But I've had students that are a little bit more like outgoing and outspoken stop a class and ask me, what is the point of this? Or where should I be feeling this? Right, yeah, where should I be feeling this? Yeah, that's a common question. And I always love that. It gives me the chance to explain it. And for every question you get, I bet there's 3 or 4 other people who had the same question. Yeah, because you're educating. Yeah. About the intention behind the intention. Yes. Intention behind the pose. Yeah. Yeah. That's really neat. Okay, so if you're pregnant, avoid prone positions, crunching of abs, of the belly, and the twisting through the abdomen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so if you are, though, someone who's been practicing for a while, like 10 years, like for me, I've been practicing for 15 years. If I was to get pregnant, this year, would a twisting be a little bit different for me? Well, actually, no, twisting's always one that you want to rule out. But, for the first 8 weeks, you can twist. The baby's so super tiny. Yeah. Maybe even the first 12 weeks. But you're right, though. The reason
But yeah, the reason that we don't twist through the abdomen is that the twisting action sends an idea to the uterus to expel.
Oh, right, because it's a detox pose.
Exactly.
Right.
So, but you'd be safe probably twisting until about 12 weeks. But again, tuning in, you won't feel comfortable twisting after a certain spot, and you'll just be like, it doesn't feel right to twist through my belly anymore. You can still, I do still take twisting in my prenatal yoga. You can still twist from the low ribs up.
Okay.
Right? But just not through the belly.
What would that look like? What kind of postures are through the ribs up?
You can do the simple seated twist.
Oh, okay.
You know, inhaling to lengthen through the spine, exhale, twisting from the low ribs up, keeping the belly pointing forward as well as you can. It's okay if the belly feels maybe a 5% twist, you know. So that's pretty much that simple seated twist is the only twist that I teach. Sometimes I'll do something different. But since the belly gets in the way, you don't do a lot of the twists where you bring the knee into the chest because for the women who are further along, they can't bring it in very far. So that wouldn't work. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. The expelling. That's, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess then so you've been teaching now for 8 years. So what, like, how do you keep a sustainable practice and a sustainable teaching? Because do you ever just sometimes just get like tired?
I do. I do sometimes get tired. I sometimes get tired of yoga.
Yeah.
Because there are days where I teach 3 or 4 classes in a day. And I've found personally, though, I've kind of cut 4 off. Every now and then it'll happen where I accidentally schedule something where I'm teaching 4 in a day. 3 is my absolute max, but I would prefer to only teach 2 in one day. Because it's a lot of giving of yourself. You know, it's a very intense teaching. You're always talking and looking and thinking and, so it's a very, very intense process. So honestly, on the days that I teach 3 yoga classes, I don't have a personal practice as far as asana. I'll definitely start my morning with meditation.
Okay.
Maybe and maybe I'll take some restorative postures before bed. But I don't find a flow class important for me to take during the day if I've taught 3 yoga classes, because I've definitely been moving my body, but I do find that it's those days that I teach 3 classes that I don't feel like doing more yoga, for sure, physically and mentally. For me personally, self-care is so important. I know self-care is like a big buzzword these days. It's so important for me, and Ayurveda helps me greatly. We could go on and on about that. So just, someday maybe we'll get together and talk about Ayurveda a little more, because we could talk for hours about that. But starting my morning with the Ayurvedic, routine is important, and making sure that I set aside restful times. For me, like I mentioned earlier, I'm an introvert. It's funny to be a teacher and be an introvert, but I'm very introverted. And after I teach 1 or 2 classes, especially 3, I need to have quiet time and be alone. I can be with my kids, but I don't want to go out and be social at all. And so I definitely have to plan in blocks of pretty much every day. So if I don't get it every day, definitely the next day after, having blocks of time quiet, alone, peaceful, And so that's how I nurture myself, so that I can go back and have the energy to be a good teacher again.
Right.
If I'm running ragged, I can't teach from a place of authenticity.
Right.
It's just it wouldn't work. So
yeah.
I feel like I liken it. I've had an office job before, and nothing, not to rag on office jobs or anything, but I know that in an office job you can go in tired. Or you can go in, and like chat with the secretary and have a cup of coffee for a while. But teaching's different. You're never kind of letting down your guard and just chilling or taking a little 15-minute break. Like, you're teaching, you are 100% on.
Right.
So yeah, in order to keep that level up, I practice a lot of self-care. I make sure and spend a lot of time with the people that I love, and take care of my body and mind and spirit.
And it goes into a few of my like round robin questions. So, what are one of your like hobbies outside of yoga? Like one of your favorite things to do outside of yoga?
Well, that goes back to what you just said. My absolute favorite thing to do is to drink tea and read with my kids.
Oh, cool.
So our happy place is like we have herbal tea with honey. We're right here on this couch.
Oh, nice.
We're rereading the Harry Potter series. We've already read it before, but now we're like rereading it again. And that's our favorite thing. And I'm also just a big reader. And now my kids are old enough. They're 10 and 8. They're old enough that they can read a book while I'm reading my book. Mm-hmm. And again, I think it's important for them to see me reading for my own pleasure, not just reading to them all the time.
Yeah.
So I would say one of my big hobbies is reading.
Okay.
Like I read voraciously. I read yoga stuff. I read, Buddhist philosophy about Taoism stuff, but then I also like to read a little bit of fiction every now and then. But mostly like historical fiction. I like reality other than the Harry Potter world. That's the only time I venture into that realm. But
what book are you on in Harry Potter?
We're on book 4 right now.
Oh, nice. The Goblet of Fire.
Yeah, the Goblet of Fire.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I read all the Harry Potters.
That's awesome.
Too. Not the newer ones not the new ones.
That play.
I haven't done that yet.
We read that one too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it's okay.
With the we'll talk about the fiction stuff later. But I read some really interesting. I'll show them to you. But I like that too. I like historical stories as well. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that offline. Yeah. Because I have a really cool book to share. Or he like writes a few books. Oh, nice. I just can't remember the name off the top of my head. Okay, so where would you like to see yourself next year?
Oh, I know. You gave me a heads up on this one, and I was kind of stumped because it is kind of my way to just be like, let's see what happens. Yeah.
Well, what seeds are you planting then now?
That's a good question.
For the future.
Yeah, that's a great question because it is true. You do, there's one thing to let the wave flow, but you do have to plant some seeds.
Right.
So one seed I'm planting is my between yoga classes. Just briefly, it's a yoga workshop for adolescents, ages 9 to 13, serving that community by presenting some of the philosophy of yoga with them and tying it into some asana, some yoga poses. I started this this fall, just a couple months ago was my first one. And it went really well, and they loved it. And since my kids are getting a little older, I'm kind of venturing into that realm of the preteen, And so it was well received. I absolutely love teaching it. I'm hoping to grow it, but right now I'm not super forcing it because I've got a lot of other things that I'm working on this winter, but I'm hoping to offer a summer between workshop. Okay. So hopefully at this time next year, I'll have that more established and it'll be, the word will be out, because that's the hardest part for me is the marketing, getting the word out on these things. I love to plan them and present them, but it's hard for me to get out to all of the different communities in Spokane.
Summer would be a good time though, because you could get in on those, families that like to give their kids like, things to do during the summer.
Yeah, like a summer camp.
A summer camp.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want to present it as, is a summer camp where it's, maybe even Monday through Friday for 2 hours, or Monday through Thursday or something. So there's that. And then just recently I've begun planning a workshop for parents who have had a pregnancy loss or stillbirth. And sadly, that's just been something I've been seeing a lot in the community of pre-natal yoga. And so I'm planning that and hoping to launch that actually in January at Lotus, which is a new place on Sprague that's offering a lot of different amazing events.
I'm actually going to talk to Sam and Erin.
Yeah. I mentioned, or I was talking to Erin about it, and she mentioned you. I don't know how we made the connection that we both knew you, but probably from Harmony. But she mentioned that she was going to talk to you.
I emailed her actually.
You did?
Yeah,
cool.
From the Natural Awakenings Yoga
Oh, she had advertised in Natural Awakening?
Yeah, they had to write up in there about it. And so I
didn't see that.
yeah, so I emailed them because I was really curious about the space. Like I didn't really know what it was all about. And then I think so I asked them if they'd be interested in, having a conversation about the space. So we're actually going to meet up tomorrow just to go and check out the Lotus.
Oh, good. Yeah. I've known Erin for years. She came to my prenatal yoga when she was pregnant with both of her kids.
Oh, wow.
And also her kids went to preschool with mine.
Oh,
so
like
she's
the same
phenomenal.
age.
And I don't know Sam. I'm looking forward to meeting her.
Cool.
But
I'm looking forward to meeting both of them too.
Yeah, they're awesome. You're going to love it. So I'm going to put that event there, partly because a lot of these women might not want to go back to Harmony where they were at prenatal yoga, and then lost their pregnancy. So it's kind of going to be a separate event, and it's going to be very gentle yoga, affirmations, mantra, community. So I've spoken with a few women who have gone through loss, and also with a local therapist who also you've spoken with, Maria Turner. I think you reached out to her. She owns a place called As We Thrive, and she's a counselor for all things motherhood.
Wow. So is it also, is this the loss and stillbirth workshops? Is this going to be something that their partners are invited to? And what if you lost your child like 10 years ago and you're still grieving that process, or you've
yeah, that's a
God
good
forbid,
question.
lost, had multiple miscarriages. Like, is it...
Which is common. Yeah. 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in loss, actually. I found that out recently. And so that's common. But yeah, it would be open to anybody.
Yeah.
And all parents,
Wow.
Moms, dads, anybody who felt, the calling to attend it would be welcome.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
So yeah, definitely. That was one thing. And I've gotten a couple of different feedback, but I think my decision is to let everybody come.
Cool.
Because I think spouses, and daddies need to mourn too, and kind of be there and turn inward toward one another as they cope. So
wow.
Yeah, that is one thing that I'm just going to let grow organically. I'm going to start it with what I have in mind, but I'm totally willing to seeing, therapists come into play, or other people, doulas, that want to be a part of it. If they want to help me, if they want to come in and help or do this or that, let's see what happens. So I'm just going to begin it. Like I said, when I get an idea, I just have to start it and jump in with 2 feet, and then we'll kind of see. I see it becoming something that's every month. And that grows a community of people who maybe become friends, just like in my other classes, and get together to support each other. So it'll be kind of like a support group and yoga.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I am looking forward to seeing, seeing that grow and having it be something that serves our community.
You seem to be becoming like the prenatal, like mama yogi or something. like the tree, like you planted the tree, and then you're growing your branches, and then other trees will kind of like join on with you to like develop your prenatal or this loss workshop or the between that you're doing. Like, you're growing it, and then you'll let other people touch it, and then kind of grow it some more. Yeah. It's super cool that you're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That imagery.
Oh, I'm all about imagery. Sometimes I don't even know where it comes from. I know. Anything else that you are planting that you kind of see for next year, or?
One other thing I'm planting, and it's funny to even mention it, but I am hoping to start a blog. I've written 1 blog article, and it's did you?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right, you did.
I really like it.
Thank you. I have kind of frozen up and been unable to publish another since then because I have trouble knowing how personal to get, you know? So I'm trying to be brave and be able to share more of my personal life, and that, I think that'll be a healing thing for me, actually, because there are certain things about my personal life that I don't share with anybody. That's not in my my close friends and family. And so I've always wanted to be a writer, actually, since I was a little girl. Like, I've always reading and writing when I was a little girl. So I know that that's something that I want to cultivate. And I excelled at writing when I was in college and these things. And I really want to cultivate my writing a little bit more. So I do have a couple of blogs that are just about ready to go out there into the world. So yeah, at this time next year, hopefully I'll have a good, batch of blogs on there. And really, I just want to start out writing them with no intention of anything in return.
Oh, okay.
Just putting them out there for myself, and who knows, we'll see what happens. Kind of the, letting go of the fruits of your actions is one of the, one of the philosophies of yoga, just like putting it out there for the sake of it.
That's what I'm doing with this podcast.
Good.
Honestly, like
that's what you have to do.
I really don't have any expectations for it, except just for my own yoga journey. Yes. Just to grow from it. And because I have so many questions.
And that's when things grow organically and authentically. Like, it's like just letting it be what it is and see what happens with it.
Well, what I really like about your blog that I read is, I think you wrote this in there. I don't know, but it's on your website. It says, our ideas, our music, our belief can be considered our offspring.
Yeah.
Did you write that?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
because it just, I love that.
I'm glad that hit home with you, because I liked that idea too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. Because if we think about, like, for me, it just really resonates with me, because everything that I do, it isn't just like tying my shoes. It's like I'm tying my shoes to go walk to Neely's house, to interview her and talk to her and get to know her more. Mm-hmm. So it's like tying my shoes isn't just tying my shoes. Like, I'm doing it to grow and, like, to get somewhere.
Yes.
And like, it's everything we do.
Everything we do is part of our path.
Right. And offspring is so powerful, because as a parent, you want your offspring to be as, their best self, or to be free. And so if everything we do, we gave it the same kind of love or support that we give our offspring, it'd just be, like, awesome.
Yeah, and not have expectations.
Yeah.
Going back to that, like, just like we have to do with our offspring, we can't be like, oh, my son's going to be a lawyer, or you can do that, but good luck,
Well, yeah.
You have to do your best and set them free, that, they come not from you, but through you, as Khalil Gibran says. So same with our ideas, and what we put out into the world, like, let it be your best work, because you don't know how it's going to affect the world.
Yeah. What is your favorite kind of yoga?
I guess I would just have to say probably yin. Yeah. Like, I love long, slow stretching.
Ooh.
I love it. deep, long
That's
periods
awesome.
of time. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Not so much to teach, but yeah.
Teaching.
I don't even teach yin.
No.
But for my personal practice,
okay,
that's what I do. I shouldn't say I don't teach it. I put yin postures in my classes. But yeah.
I know what you mean.
To do.
Yeah, to do. Yin is powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is a place in town in Spokane that people should visit? Like, if they were to come here, what would you suggest?
I love our parks. And since I live on the South Hill, like, I feel so blessed because there's so many within walking distance. But I would say Manitou Park, but if that's too cliche or whatever, there are so many other amazing parks, like Cannon Hill Park. There's actually, in about 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I'll need to go pick up my kids, and their bus stop is at Cliff Park. You climb up these stairs, and there's like this rock wall that goes around, and there's grass up there, and you can look out over the city. And it's this random, we call it Ireland, because there's this big rock wall around it. And so my kids will be like, can we go up to Ireland? So it's just an amazing place to visit, because it's so unique. I think Spokane, especially the South Hill, because it's so old, has so many little unique treasures, and I'm always finding new ones.
Right, there's like right around the corner.
Yeah.
Down a street that you don't go down, then you go down there like, whoa, this is right here.
Yeah, my boyfriend and I usually go on walks Sunday mornings, and we are always finding new little pockets of the South Hill that we've never even seen before. And it's like cool architecture and these old
Yeah.
homes. And yeah, so I just love, and then I also hiking around here. The trails are awesome. Like Deep Creek is one of our favorite places to go.
Don't tell people about that.
Oh, I mean, sheep gleep. Yeah, Spokane is not cool.
I might edit that out.
Okay. I don't
just
blame you.
kidding.
Hiking around Spokane is great. Try Coeur d'Alene.
That is so funny. Try Seattle.
Don't tell people about that.
That place is sweet.
You asked. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, it's crazy.
It's so cool. I know.
Totally. Our first time we were there, we were like, are you serious?
Yeah.
It's probably 4 miles from where I used to live as a teenager.
Oh man, you're like, bummer.
Yeah, I grew up on the north side. I
this.
never knew about
It's
it.
been a great place to run away to.
Mm-hmm.
No,
oh,
but
my kids love it.
So neat, like all those little caves and then little tunnels you can walk through.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Totally.
I'm gonna bring one of my good friends there this week. She's never been, and I'm like, what? Are you serious?
Oh my
We're gonna take the dogs there this week.
Yeah.
It's just an awesome place.
I've snowshoed through it in the winter too. Have you done that?
Oh no, I want to do that this year.
It's like still amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's
really cool.
That's such a it's the largest state park in Washington.
What?
Or something like that.
Huh?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Again, maybe something that I'm making up.
No, that doesn't make
The
sense.
cat cow. In the show notes, we will let you know if it is.
Totally.
Fact check. Cool. Well, Neely, thank you so much for this and for your time.
You.
And
I'm so honored to be doing this with you.
yeah, my first.
Excited for your
The
to
first
be your
podcast.
first podcast gal.
Yeah, well, all of the great things that Neely has going on will be in our show notes, and we'll keep you up to date if you follow us on social media with all of the things that Neely has going on. So you can stay in the loop and connect to her that way. Yeah, and then I'll also link where people can find you too.
Yeah. So it's very easy because my website is Neely's Yoga.
Okay.
Since I have a unique name,
Yeah,
I was
you
able
do.
to get that. So it's just Neely's Yoga, and that's all my information.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, there it was, the first episode of Yogakane. Wow. Thank you so much to Neely for your time and energy, and thank you for listening. I know that Neely mentioned some great stuff in that podcast about her workshops, some books, quotes, notable yogis from the Spokane community. All of that information can be found in the show notes, and it can also be found on the Yogakane website. If you go under the podcast blog portion of the website, you will see Neely's blog, and there will be links to all that stuff that Neely talked about, as well as contact information if you want to get a hold of her. So, a few little housekeeping things before we wrap up. Just wanted to let you know that each week a new podcast will be dropped. And if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and leave a review for the podcast in the iTunes store. And like always, the podcast, since we are new, can really use the power of sharing. So please share this with your yoga friends. Also, one other thing to mention, this podcast is just as much yours as it is mine. So if you know of any people in your yoga community within the Pacific Northwest that you would like to hear on the podcast, please send me their contact info. And if you have any yoga-related questions that you would like answered, please send me your questions and I will do my best to get them answered. And I think that's it. I just want to read Neely's quote one more time to really set us on a good course for 2019. Our ideas, our music, our belief can be considered our offspring. I just love that. Okay, Happy New Year to all of you. Namaste and Shanti peace to you and your household.